Hi, I'm Heather Martin, a registered dietitian, and I'm here today for the FPIES Foundation to talk about some of the misconceptions about FPIES for Global FPIES Day. FPIES stands for Food Protein-Induced Enterocolitis Syndrome. Because it's a relatively newly described disorder, there are still a lot of areas of confusion about it. So here are 5 myths about FPIES. Myth number 1. If skin and blood allergy tests are negative, the child is not allergic. Skin and blood tests only detect one kind of allergy, called an IgE-mediated allergy. And that's the kind of reaction most people mean when they're talking about food allergies. But FPIES reactions are caused by a different kind of mediator, called a non-Ige mediator, that hasn't been identified yet. About a quarter of FPIES children will have at least some positive tests on IgE allergy testing, but most of them will have negative results. At this time, FPIES is a diagnosis of exclusion made from getting a careful clinical history and from ruling out other conditions with similar symptoms. There are currently no blood or skin tests that are specific to the diagnosis of FPIES. Because of this, one of the biggest challenges for parents is that people around their child don't think of it as a real allergy and don't understand how serious it can be. Parents may be encouraged to give their child small amounts of trigger foods because surely a little bit won't hurt. But the standard advice right now for FPIES is to avoid even trace amounts of trigger foods for a minimum of a year after the last reaction. Myth number 2. No one is allergic to rice. It is true that rice is an uncommon allergy in terms of the typical IgE reaction, at least in Western countries. However, rice and oatmeal are 2 of the most common solid food triggers for FPIES. Other common FPIES triggers include milk, soy, other grains, and poultry, but any food can cause a reaction, even those with relatively low amounts of protein, such as fruits and vegetables. Myth number 3. It can't be an FPIES reaction if it doesn't cause shock. It is true that a patient having an FPIES reaction is at risk for going into shock, and that's why a good emergency plan developed by the medical team is so important to have in place. But one review reported that while about 75% of children having a reaction do appear seriously ill, only about 15% of reactions require hospitalization. It's important to remember that reactions can worsen with repeat exposure, so even if the reaction to a food did not cause shock the first time it happened, it could the next time. Myth number 4. Don't worry if your child is refusing foods. They'll eat when they're hungry. It is true that most children will eat when they're hungry, and that occasional disinterest in food or certain kinds of food can be normal in infants and toddlers. However, children who have gotten very sick from trying new foods are at risk for developing aversion to solid foods or to certain textures. These aversions can be really hard for a parent to fix without help, and they may not go away when the triggers are removed from the diet. This can cause nutritional deficiencies and feeding problems even after FPIES is outgrown. Some children will need feeding therapy from occupational or speech therapists in order to develop normal feeding skills and to eat a varied, healthy diet. Myth number 5. It can't be FPIES because this child is a healthy weight.
When Cooper was first diagnosed, his weight fell from the 75th percentile to the 25th percentile.
FPIES children who have had long-term exposure to triggers certainly can be underweight or start to fall from their usual growth curve. But that's more common either with chronic reactions before 6 months or with children who have many different solid food triggers. Babies who have had their first reactions only when they're started on solids are usually growing as expected when they first visit a doctor seeking diagnosis. And when fed a nutritionally complete diet free of their food triggers, a child of any age should be expected to catch up if they need to, and then to follow their usual growth curve. There are a lot of different possible growth patterns depending on the number of food triggers, the challenges in providing a complete diet, and whether or not diagnosis was delayed. As you can tell from these myths, kids with FPIES face some truly significant challenges, and many parents report an even greater impact on daily life than they do with IgE allergies. It takes a lot of recipe experimentation and creativity, but with good support from their medical teams, families, and communities, children with FPIES grow and develop normally. Visit www.fpiesfoundation.org for more information.